This conference will now be recorded.
See, go anywhere. The people are saying about constructor is same like a method. If it is the same like a method, what is the purpose of constructor again? If it is the same, then what is the another name, another feature, another block, right? So people are saying same like a method, but there are a few differences between constructor and method. So if we compare, you will get to know what constructor does, what method will does, right? So constructor is same like a method, but so it should not have a return type, and the constructor name always should be a class name. So whereas method, we can give any name, right? So, and remember what we have achieved by the use of methods. So first of all, let me say, if I say, see, this is a method. What is the method signature here? Public return type method name. And if you want, you have to pass the parameter, right? See here the constructor signature, access specifier, no return type, and constructor name. See, observe the constructor name, method name. So method name, we are giving our method name, but whereas constructor name, you should not give other than a class name. You have to give same as a class name. If you try to give other than class name, and it will going to consider it is a method, and it is asking you to add return type. Always remember, constructor does not have any return type, and constructor name should be a class name. And even you should not give a return type and return statement as well. If you are trying to give, it will give you error. Clear? And one more thing. So whatever the code you are writing inside a method, same code you can write inside a constructor, right? And how the constructor will execute him? So if you have a method, so we know how to execute the method. First of all, if this is a non-static method, right? First of all, we have to create object. After creating, we have to explicitly call that method. To execute that method, we have to explicitly call with object reference. This is a class object. We are explicitly calling the method to execute that method. Then how to execute constructor team? See, after creating object, you don't need to call constructor like method, because here by the time of creating object, so your construct will going to execute. So what is the object creation syntax team? What is the object create syntax team? Anyone? Syntax of object creation.
Class name object name is equal to new class name.
Remember earlier we are discussing, if anyone asks how to create an object, the syntax is class name, object name is equal to new keyword and class name. This is what earlier syntax. Now onwards, don't say like this. Now onwards, you have to say class name, object name equal to new keyword, and this is not a class name, this is a constructor. If it is a class name, then what is the purpose of parenthesis here? And update your definition, update your object creation syntax. What is the current syntax here? See, you have to say, if anyone has to create object for a class, you have to give the syntax like this: class name, object name equals to new keyword, constructor. In this line, 20th line, what we are doing? We are creating object for a class. Which class? A class, by using new keyword, and object reference we are giving a. And here not only creating object, along with creating object, we are calling a class default constructor. Yes or no? And update your definition. What is your definition? What is your syntax for object creation? Class name, object name equal to new class name. If it is a parameterized class name, parameterized constructor, you have to give parameter here. If it is default constructor, no need to pass a parameter here. By the time of calling constructor, So if you want to call parameterized constructor, you have to create one more object here like this. By the time you have to differentiate your reference. Now this is I'm creating object for a class and I'm calling a class default constructor. Here I'm creating object for a class again and I'm calling a class single parameterized constructor. See, like methods, we can maintain n number of constructor inside a class. So constructors are two types. One is single parameterized constructor and second one is default constructor and parameterized constructor. What are the constructor team? Constructors are two types. First one is default constructor. Default constructor nothing but constructor without parameter. I can say without parameter. And second one is parameterized constructor. I can say with parameters, whether it may be one parameter or two parameter, three parameter. Constructors are two types. First one is default constructor and second one is parameterized constructor. Clear? See here, default constructor. Observe team, observe, or else let me create a class. No need to create a class. Again, same this one. See, this is my class here, right? So how to create a constructor? Access specifier, public, and can I give any name here? Constructor one, like this. I should not give because always constructor name. Remember, always constructor name should be your class name. Clear team? And observe. So for understanding purpose, just let me give some logic system.println. This is a default constructor, right? And let me give main method because without main method we cannot execute. How to execute this constructor team? Class name, object name equals to new class name. Yes or no? If I execute this program, what is the output? If I execute this one, what is the output? Why are you thinking that much, team? Just it will execute a class default constructor. Yes or no? Simple logic. See here, let me remove my default constructor. Why I'm not getting error here? Why I'm not getting error? Anyway, I'm saying class name, object name equal new constructor, but in class, in my A class, there is no any constructor here. Why I'm getting error? Why I'm not getting error? Tell me, team, why I'm not getting error? Anyway, I'm creating object, nothing but I'm calling constructor here. This is nothing but, so what is the syntax meaning? Creating object for which class?
By default, constructor is created without parameters.
Exactly. See, so whenever you not mention any constructor inside a class, repeating, whenever you not mention any constructor inside your class, by the time of execution, program will always create a constructor for your class. What is the constructor program will going to create? Always program going to create default constructor. This is by the time of execution, program JVM will create your default constructor. Clear, team? And let me ask one question. Program nothing but JVM creates constructor. Yes or no? Yes or no, team? Program will create a constructor. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks. And this is first one. Yes. Program creates parameter constructor. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. No, team. See, program is always going to create a default constructor, not parameterized constructor. Program will allow to create only default constructor. That too when if you don't have a constructor, program will create a constructor. Program will create which constructor? Program will create only default constructor. See, simple logic. If I mention a constructor, program will not going to touch your class. If I not mention a constructor, program create a constructor. That's it. First of all, by the time of execution of your class, program will check whether your class having at least one constructor or not. If your class having constructor, program will not create any constructor. If your class not having constructor, program will going to create constructor, that to default constructor only. Remember. See, team, see, if I have a like this, if I have a like this parameterized constructor, see, by the time of calling, observe, it is giving me error. So that I have to supply parameter by the time manually by the time of creating object. See, anyway, if it is a like this, if it is a if it is not having with parameter, program will create this one. Then how can this pass parameter? Program is not allowing to pass parameter. That's why program is not allowing to create constructor whenever your class having at least one constructor. Let me repeat it, team. See, question number 1, program creates constructor. Yes. Second one, program is always going to create constructor. Yes or no?
Yes.
Why yes, ma'am? Suppose if I have a constructor, why program is going to create a constructor?
If it is if we have defined it doesn't create, but if we have not defined, it will create one default one without parameters.
There is we have one option, right? So if I have a constructor, if I have a constructor in class, whether it may be a parameter or default constructor, then how the program is going to create a constructor? This is no,
Defined
because
it won't create.
when here you have to say the one condition here. What is my condition? I have a constructor in my class. Yes or no? Why I am saying no? So always the question is program
Can
always
you
going to create a constructor. Sorry, ma'am. See,
have a
program
constructor, then it won't create.
exactly. So simple logic, ma'am. If your class having constructor, program will not going to be create. Forget as of now. Forget it about whether it may be a parameterized or default. If I mention a constructor, program will going to not going to touch you. If I not mention, program will create a constructor, that to default constructor only. Simple. If my class having constructor, program will not going to create. If I if I'm not mention constructor, program will create a default constructor. That's it. Understand the question? Program create constructor. Yes. Program always going to create a constructor? No. Because all the time it won't create a constructor. We have it two ways. So if you mention a constructor inside a class, program will not going to touch your class. If you not mention, program will create. That's why always no. And second thing, third one, program creates parameterized constructor. No. Program create default constructor. Here you can say program creates always default constructor. Yes or no?
No.
Why no, team? See, program, that is what we are discussing, right? Program always create default constructor. Confusion?
But if we created a constructor without parameters,
Okay.
we have if we have defined a constructor without parameters, then it will not create another one, no?
Simple, ma'am. See, this is I am creating my constructor. This is my construct which I have created. I can say created by user. Now, if I execute this program, let me know program will touch my class or not. First of all, no,
No.
program will not touch because already I have created a constructor. Forget about whether it may be parameterized or default. Now, if I don't have this one, now this time, by the time of execution, program will create a constructor. Now, this time it is created by program by the time of execution, not in your code. See team, this is not in your code, and program will not going to write the code like this. By the time of execution, program is going to create constructor for you. But the condition is you should not have at least one constructor. See, if I execute like this without constructor, program will going to create a constructor. If I execute with constructor, program will not going to touch your class. Able to get? Simple. First of all,
Okay.
by the time of execution, program will check whether this class having constructor or not. If class not having any constructor, zero constructor, now consider my class is a zero constructor now. If it is a zero constructor, then program will going to create a single constructor. That too what constructor? That too default constructor only. This is by the time of execution, program will going to check for each and every class. For each and every class, program will check whether the class having constructor or not, whether it may be parameter as default. If the class not having constructor, let's consider class having a zero constructor, and program will create a single constructor, that to default constructor. And second thing, see, if your program having at least one constructor, I'm repeating at least once, it's apply for parameter and default. If your class having at least one constructor, and program will not going to create a constructor for you. Clear, team? So remember these 2 points, just these 2 points, don't confuse. Remember these 2 points. What is the 2 point? See, let's consider my class having 0 constructor, class with 0 constructor, and program will create one constructor. What is that constructor? Default constructor. And I'm class having one constructor, whether it may be parameterized or default. And there is no concept of object creation. Clear, team? Now repeat the question. See, program creates constructor. Yes. Program always going to create constructor? No. Why? If I have a constructor, program will not going to create a constructor. And program create parameter constructor? No. Always program create constructor of what constructor? It will create only default constructor. Still any doubts? Just practice once, you will get to know. So execute a class without constructor, execute a class with constructor, parameterized constructor, default constructor. You will get to know. Simple logic, just remember one point, only one point. If I mention a constructor, program will not going to touch my class. That's it. Okay. Now, let me create a constructor. So what is this constructor, team? This is default constructor without the parameter. Right? And can I maintain one more constructor here? I can maintain, right? So I can maintain n number of constructors. But why I'm getting error here, team? Because you cannot maintain same constructors. For that, I am differentiating with parameter. What is this concept, team?
Method
What is this
overriding.
concept? Constructor overriding. Same like method overloading, right? Sorry, method overloading. What is the definition of method overloading? Method overloading. Method with
With
same name,
same class,
differentiated by
Name,
parameters, number of parameters, but within the same
same
class. Here
name
also,
and method.
yes. Here also, constructor with same name. Anyway, constructor name is same like a class name. Constructor with same name, differentiated by parameter within the class. This is we are calling as a constructor overloading. Constructor overloading. We are overloading with parameter. There we are overloading with parameter only. But there, who is the actor? Method. Here, actor is constructor. Right? So, what if I want to execute these three constructors? Quickly, team. I want to execute these three constructors. Why are you thinking that much, team? I can execute like this, right? Class name, object name is equal to now onwards new constructor. So if I execute this one, what is the output?
Default
default
constructor.
constructor.
Exactly. So if I execute this one, it will execute default constructor, right? See, it will execute default constructor. What if I want to execute this single parameterized constructor and double parameterized constructor?
You should pass the parameter inside that A.
Exactly. So if I want to execute single parameterized constructor and double parameterized constructor, I have to pass the variables here. See here, this will execute my single parameterized constructor because I am passing single parameter, right? And this will execute my double parameterized constructor because I am passing two parameters by the time of calling. Pass parameter, first parameter, second parameter. And differentiate the object, should not maintain duplicate references. Now observe what is the output. If I execute this one, so we'll execute 3 constructor. And I forgot to ask, what is the constructor? What is the use of constructor, team? What is the use of constructor? Same like method, we can maintain a logic here, but we have a special use case here. If you want to execute a piece of code by the time of object creation, that code mentioned inside your constructor. I've given yesterday example, right? Login. That is the use of constructor. Now, see, if I execute this one, this will execute default constructor, this will execute single parameter constructor, this will execute double parameterized constructor. Now, tell me, how many times I'm creating object? How many times I'm creating object here?
3 times.
Exactly. Here I'm creating 3 times object. Let's consider in a real case, this won't be like this, but I'm having a class that I want to execute 100 constructors. Now tell me, if I want to execute 100 constructors, how many times I have to create object?
100.
100, right? Obviously, if we want to execute 100 constructors, we have to create object for 100 times. See here, object creation nothing but, we already discussed, object creating nothing but what is team? Object creating nothing but
Memory.
object creating nothing but inside a JVM you are creating memory for your class. Remember, always object creating nothing but you are creating memory for your class. See, if you keep on creating object, if you keep on calling constructor, obviously at a certain point of time you are running out of memory. Yes or no? Program is not allowed to create new memory. Anyway, it is managed by JVM, but you should not execute like this. This is the wrong practice. You should not create number of objects. You have to optimize the code. See, observe team, observe. See, I can execute these 3 constructor by creating one object. I can execute these 3 constructor with single object. For that, we have a concept called constructor calls. We have a concept called, what is the concept team? Constructor calls. We can call the constructor. For that, we have a keywords called this keyword. This is a keyword and super keyword. This and super. These are the again special keywords in Java. We can use this is referred to. This is referred to current class members. What is super team? Super refer to, already we have come across this keyword, parent class members. This is referred to current class member, super is referred to parent class member. Now let me show you how can we execute 3 constructor with single object. Right? See, observe here. Let's see. This is my default constructor. Inside default constructor, can I call this parameterized constructor? Have you remember team? inside a method, can we call a method? Have you remember? Have you remembered him? Inside a method, can I call any method? Why are you thinking that much, team? See, this is my test class. Inside this test class, I'm having a method called test method. Now system.println. What if I want to execute this test method? Come on, quickly. If I want to execute this test method, what I have to do?
Main method.
Exactly. First of all, we should have a main method. Main method. Inside main method, we have to create object for this class, right? Test t equal to new of test. Okay. And with object reference, we can call this test method. Nothing but we are creating test method with object reference, or directly we can call it, right? See, this is a static method. Inside a static method, if you want to access anything, that should be a static, whether it may be variable or method. See here. Now this time I can directly call this test method. Yes or no? This is I am directly calling. This is I am calling with object reference. With object reference. Yes or no? Already we discussed this, team. This is object reference. This is directly we are calling. Now observe. Now observe. Like same how we access method directly. Can I access my single parameterized constructor inside a default constructor? Now observe, team. So if I want to call directly, see, anyway, we cannot access constructor with object reference. Yes or no? We have discussed, right? So we cannot access constructor with object reference. It will give you error. See, constructor, when we are executing constructor by the time of object creation. See here, I'm trying to call my parameterized constructor, single parameterized constructor directly inside my default constructor. See here, this is how you have to call if I call like this. But it is giving me error. So if you want to parameter a constructor, just pass a parameter. Excuse me. Excuse me. Observe, team. So if you want to call this one, you have to call with this keyword called this. Observe. I'm removing this one. This is nothing but calling constructor, that too with single parameterized constructor. Clear, team? As of now, let me comment on this one. See here, if I want to execute this one, let me create a main method. Now, this time, observe, team. Now, I want to execute my single parameter constructor, one constructor. Now, for that, we have to create an object. Already we know it. Class name, object name is equal to new constructor. I'm executing here which constructor? Default constructor. Now observe, team. Now observe. Now this time output, observe, it got executed. single parameter constructor, default constructor. Now observe the execution process. See here, in 13 line, I am creating object. For which class? A class. Syntax, class name, object name equal new constructor. And again, along with creating object, I am calling constructor. Which constructor? Default constructor. Now, where is my default constructor? From 13th line to program will come to the 5th line. Here, this is my default constructor. Now, inside default constructor, I am saying that with this keyword boss, first execute this class parameterized constructor because I am passing a single parameter. Now the program skip from 6th to 9th line because I am having parameterized constructor in 9th line. Clear team? Now first initially it will execute parameterized constructor 9th line, 10th line on 11th line, and this is got printed first parameterized constructor. Now program here only 6th line. Now 6th line got executed. Nothing but completion of execution of parameter constructor. Now it will execute 7th line default constructor. So Java execution line by line, it will execute line by line. In 6th line, what I'm saying, boss first execute parameter constructor, then execute default constructor. Nothing but then executes remaining lines. In 6th line, it will execute parameter constructor after completing parameter constructor coming back to the 7th line. Clear team? Clear? This is the how we can execute multiple constructor with single object. For that, we are using a keyword called this keyword. This is how you have to call the constructor. This is nothing but in this class, this is a constructor. Which constructor? I am passing a single parameter and program consider this is a single parameterized constructor. Nothing but this is a single parameter constructor. Hidden, it will be like this. Clear team? Now let me take one more parameterized constructor. Now differentiate B. Now observing how I executed single parameter constructor with single object, even I can execute my double parameter constructor too. See how I am calling this one single parameter constructor inside default. I can call my double parameter constructor inside a single parameter constructor. Now observing this time you have to see why I'm getting error team. Anyone here why I'm getting error? See, this is a single parameter constructor. Here I am mentioning again
Calling a
single
single
parameter constructor. So program will give you error. Boss, you are calling this constructor inside this constructor only. You are calling single parameter constructor again inside a single parameter constructor. Now let me pass one more parameter. And this time it will execute what team? This time it will execute double parameter
Double.
constructor, and this is nothing but this, nothing but like this. It will program will consider constructor with two parameters. Now observe team. Double parameter first, single parameter and default constructor. Now observe the execution. See here. Whenever you execute the program, first of all, program will check for the main method. Yes or no. Now I'm having main method. inside main method by the time of program loading, right? By the time of object creation, program will check whether this class having constructor or not. If class not having constructor, program will create. In this case, I am having constructors, right? I'm having 3 constructor. Now program will not going to create any constructor. Program will not going to create default constructor, right? Now I'm having 3 constructor. I'm creating object here. Class name, object name is new constructor. Which constructor I'm calling here? Default constructor. Now program coming to the 5th line. Inside 5th line, what is my first line? Again, I'm calling single parameter constructor. From 6th line to program coming to where? 9th line. Single parameter constructor. Inside single parameter constructor, and first before executing this one, and call double parameter constructor. Now it will come into the double parameter constructor 13 line. Inside 13 line, what we are mentioning, just to print out this statement, right? Now double parameter statement got executed. Now this line completed. Now coming back to where? Coming back to single parameter constructor. This got completed and print this statement. And coming back to the where? 6th line. This got completed. Coming to the 7th line, got printed default constructor. That is why the order is double parameter constructor first, single parameter constructor first, default constructor. But execution order is same. First default constructor, right? Coming to default constructor, then single para. Going to single para, execute double para. Coming back to this one, single default. Observe the execution order by debug point, you will get to know. Okay, team. This is how you have to execute multiple constructors with creating a single object with constructor call. What the constructor call, team? We have constructor call of this constructor call. With this, you can call multiple constructor with single reference, single object. Clear, team? And now let me, this is my B class, right? See here, I'm having a B class. Inside B class, I'm having a method, sorry, constructor called B. B default constructor. I'm creating a default constructor, right? This is default constructor. Main method, class name, object name is equal to new constructor. What is the output, team, if I execute this one? What is the output?
B
Anyone?
default constructor.
Exactly. B class default constructor, it will execute this one. Now observe, team, let's consider my B class having a parent called A. Let me remove this one. Now this is my empty class as of now, or else let me create a default constructor. This is A class default constructor, system.out.println A class default constructor, right? So as of now, do we have any relationship between my A class and B class? No, right? Let me make relationship. Extends A, right? Which is parent, which is child, team?
B child.
I'm having 2 classes, B class and A class, right? This is B. What is the keyword? Extends. We already know it, right? Extends. Extends A. This is A. Parent class, or people are calling super class. This is child class, or people are calling subclass. Child class or subclass. Now let me make relationship extends. B extends A. Now I'm having a constructor in B. What is my constructor named him here in B class? Constructor named him
B.
exactly same like method class name, right? This is my B class default constructor. Now this is my A class default constructor. As of now, I'm giving system order println, right? For understanding purpose, here let me give this is A class default constructor. This is B class default constructor. Same. What I have created, I have documented here inside Paint. Just I documented here. Now observe team. Now observe. See here, I'm having a parent class. Inside my parent class, I have a default constructor. I'm having child class. Inside child class, I'm having default constructor. Right? See, if I execute this program, what is the output? Any guess? Text me. Anyone? If I execute this one, what is the output? See here, I am creating object for which class team? Child class or parent class?
Child.
Child class,
Child
right?
class.
Nothing but I am calling which class? Default constructor. This is nothing but B class.
B
B
default.
class default constructor, right? Now, obviously, what is the output? Obviously, what is the output team?
B default.
Exactly. B class
B
default
default.
constructor. Exactly. B class default constructor got to execute. Now observe the output. Run as Java application. See here team. First of all, my parent class default constructor got execute. After that, B class default constructor. Observe, am I anywhere calling my parent class default constructor here?
No.
Am I calling anywhere? No, right? See, just simply here I am creating object for which class? B class, my child class. B equals to new of B. Just I am executing, I'm creating object for B class. Now I may think like it may execute B class default constructor. Yes or no? But programmatically it will execute both B class constructor and it will execute parent class default constructor. This is because of default super. Nothing but whenever your class having a relationship, whenever your class having relationship, before executing the current class constructor, always it will execute parent class default constructor. See, programmatically, see, if I want to execute parent class constructor, you have to execute like this: super constructor. This is super constructor calling. This is nothing but like this: calling parent class default constructor. This is default constructor. But see, if you mention or not mention, program will always consider like this. See, this is an optional team. If you mention, see, there is no output difference here. Observe team again. See here. Earlier also same output. Now after mentioning the super keyword also now same output, because this is an optional. If you mention or not mention, always program is try to call your parent class default constructor before executing your current class constructor. That too whenever your class having relationship, whenever your class having parent. Clear team? This is we are calling as super constructor calls. This is a default. Any doubts? Clear, right? See team. See, let me create one more class here. My class name is D. Now A extends D. Clear? See here. Let me maintain a default constructor inside a D. This is D class default constructor. For understanding purpose, system.println. This is D class default constructor. Now observe team. I have a like this. Again for A class, I am having, see, this is my B class, this is my A class, this is my D class. Right? This is D, this is A, this is B. I am creating object for which one? B1. BB equals to new of B. Now, so if I execute this one, I may think this will execute only B class default constructor if I am having B like this. This will execute only this one, B class default constructor. But it will execute B class default constructor. It will execute B class default constructor and default super. It will execute A class default constructor. It will execute D class default constructor. Observing. Just here coming to the B, I am creating only one class object, that too B class object, calling B class default constructor. See, if you mention or not mention, this is same here, right? And go to the A class. This is also same here, if you mention or not mention. Super constructor calling. Now execute this one. Run as Java application. See a team. First B1. Before that one, parent. Before this one, parent. Always by the time of executing your constructor, it will check whether this class having a parent or not. If it is having parent, and execute default constructor. What we are discussing team first initially, suppose, see, program always create a constructor. At what time? If your class not having at least one constructor, program will create a constructor for your class. Let's consider if you having a 10 classes, it will create, if you're having 10 classes, consider all the 10 classes not having a constructor. Program will create a default constructor by the time of execution. for your all 10 classes, right? So in this case, I'm having 3 classes. Inside 3 classes, I'm having 3 default constructors. Now program will not going to create a default constructor because already I'm having a constructor, one constructor in each and every class. Now I want to execute my B class default constructor. How to execute? Create object. Class name, object name equal to new constructor name. Here what constructor am I calling? B class default constructor. Programmatically, by the time of execution constructor, first of all, it will check whether this class having parent or not. In this case, B class having parent. Which one? A. Inside A, again I am having a constructor, that too default constructor. Before executing B class default constructor, it will execute A class default constructor. And by the time of execution, again it will check whether it is having parent or not. Yes, it is having parent. Now whether it is having default constructor or not. Yes, it has a default constructor. Now execute first this one. This is super constructor calling. Super constructor calling is this is default one. This is optional. Clear, team? See, let's consider. So don't get confused. Let's consider my A class having parameterized constructor int A. Now observe here inside a B. Observe here getting error. See, super class having a parameters constructor, before executing this B class default constructor, you have to execute super class parameters constructor, because for that you have to pass parameter. Confusion, team? No, right? See, if your super class or parent class having a default constructor, it will automatically execute. If you want to call it, you can call by using super constructor. If it is a parameter, by the time of calling, you have to pass parameter. If your constructor or parent class having a default constructor, no need to pass parameter. Now, if I execute this one, see, if I execute this one, it will execute a class parameter constructor here. If I don't pass parameter, it will check whether it is having a default constructor or not. Now my A class not having default constructor, it is having only one parameter constructor. Practice, team, you will get to know. It's a little bit confused. Just practice. Okay. So I'm sending this record and I'm sending this document. Just try to practice, create a multiple classes, relationship, execute the classes, execute parameter constructors, execute default constructors. If you get any doubts, let me know. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Nim.